the devolution of power and resources is going to empower the local communities. In the next 10 years, Kenya is not going to be the same again.
Wale watu ambao wako kule chini wamenyanyaswa na hali ngumu ya kimaisha, maisha yao itaweza kuinuka kwa sababu watakuwa na serikali pale na watakuwa wanapata zile services zote ambazo wanahitaji.
People like Northeastern, they will really be economically empowered.
People have started to propagate it or to think that devolution will bring tribalism or will tear apart the country.
Devolution has been an emotive subject in Kenya. Majimbo, a form of devolution under the Independence Constitution, was quickly dismantled by the Kenyatta regime before it had a chance to operate. The devolution debate during the 2005 referendum was equally emotive. Finally, on August 27, 2010, Kenya promulgated the new Constitution of Kenya, which establishes a devolved system of government. So what exactly is devolution?
Devolution is a form of governance where you seek to decentralize power, you seek to decentralize services, and you seek to decentralize democracy.
In devolution, you give powers, you give resources to the lower levels, whatever you call them. Like in our case, we are calling them counties. So the lower levels have resources that they can use to plan and manage their own affairs.
It was realized there was too much concentration of everything in Nairobi: executive power, judicial power, legislative power. There's too much concentration in finances in Nairobi, and essentially the people did not feel that they were participating in the democracy enough. So the idea of the design of this devolution is you bring representation closer to the people. You are able to elect a governor who sits within your county, and therefore you feel that you are participating in your governance, rather than elect a president who you only see perhaps during campaign. You have a county governor and a county assembly who receive a certain percentage of monies, which then they use in the priorities that they decide, rather than Nairobi prioritizing. And thirdly, you have a situation where decisions are able to be made within the county, not just in Nairobi. That is the whole essence of devolution.
Countdown to Counties takes a detailed look at county leadership positions under Kenya's devolved government structure. We look at the elected leadership with respect to county governments. Let us first take a look at the structure and functions of county governments. The county government comprises two arms of government, the executive and the legislative. The executive consists of the governor, the deputy governor, and the county executive committee. The governor will be elected by a simple majority of voters of that county. The deputy governor will be nominated by the governor as a running mate at least 60 days before the election and will automatically assume office should the governor win the election. The county executive committee members will be appointed by the governor with the approval of the county assembly. There shall be a maximum of 10 in number. The county assembly consists of one member per ward elected by a simple majority, and there are also special assembly seats created for gender and marginalized groups. These will be elected on the basis of party lists. Schedule 4 of the Constitution clearly outlines the functions of each level of government. National government will deal with core national functions such as national security, monetary policy, foreign affairs, national infrastructure, and others. County governments, in turn, are primarily responsible for service delivery and are responsible for water, agriculture, health, county infrastructure, and other county services. Article 6 of the Constitution states that the governments at national and county level are distinct, interdependent, and shall conduct their mutual relations on the basis of consultation and cooperation. How exactly will this work?
We have two levels of government. None is higher than the other. You have the county, you have the national, and each has functions given by the Constitution. The Intergovernmental Relations Act now has unpacked how the relationships will be. And you have things like you have the summit. The president will chair the summit with all the governors. So if you have the president chairing all the governors in a forum, then that's where now they bring all the key issues. In that organ, again, that act provides for the counties being able to be on their own. They have their own council, they have their own assembly where they meet, because we also know that although we have 47 counties, these counties need each other.
In some cases, national and county governments may be expected to share and transfer functions, but they must always respect the functional distinctness of the other level. It sounds complicated, but this is how it works.
Although the functions are given to one level of government, the Constitution allows one level to transfer the function given to it by the very Constitution to the other level.
It's important to understand that the county governor, the county executive, the county assembly only do what they are mandated to do in terms of Schedule 4. They don't creep into roles that are still reserved for the national government. For example, national security remains for the national government. And even though the governor is the head of that county, the governor cannot decide that in security matters, he or she has the ultimate say, and perhaps even start their own parallel police force and try to, restrict the activities of the Kenya police and all that. They cannot do that. The judiciary still remains for the national government, and the county government cannot interfere. So, although that system has been transposed into the county governor, the county representatives must be very clear that they can only exercise powers that belong to them.
According to the Constitution, one of the objects of devolution is to foster national unity by recognizing diversity and to ensure equitable sharing of national and local resources throughout Kenya. So how will devolution address ethnic differences and tensions around the country?
Ethnicity is a good thing, it's only that it's politicized. So we expect the new system now, which requires equality, participation, and that resources be divided accordingly, that there will be less issue in terms of ethnicity. Of course, people have argued that it can end up in federalism, people wanting to pull away, like the Mombasa Republican Council is doing, but that was not the initial idea of devolution. Another thing that this constitution provides, that there is an equalization fund that runs for about 20 years plus. And we expect that by 20 years, no Kenyan should be complaining. Maybe it's an ideal, but at least it is in paper, and now people can use that if a section feels marginalized, like Mombasa feels marginalized. I think there are provisions in this constitution that they can use to engage and change that situation.
One of the things and messages that should actually be passed, for example, to the Mombasa Republican Council, is that you cannot be moving towards secession at just the time we have adopted a constitution that respects devolution. Even if the concerns were real, give it 10 years or 15 years and then see how it works.
Chapter 11 of the Constitution recognizes the right of communities to manage their own affairs and further their own development. It requires services to be close to the people and easily accessible. The County Government Act of 2012 establishes 3 further administrative levels under the county governments. It establishes 290 sub-county administrative units, coinciding with constituency boundaries. It recognizes 1,450 electoral wards as a further level of administration. It provides for the establishment of the village administrative units below each ward level. Each administrative unit is to be placed under the management of an administrator who will be recruited through the county public service.
In terms of the service delivery, we argue that when the people at the local level know better what they need. So this constitution emphasizes participation all over. And since the participation is embedded, we expect through integrated planning, which is also provided in the constitution and in the bills that we have, that people will be able to say what they need and how they need it done.
Areas of high population, which meet the requirements of the law, will be categorized as cities or urban areas and are eligible to establish their own management boards, which remain under the authority of the county government.
The Cities and Urban Areas Act has provided for the management of cities, municipalities and towns. Until last year, we had only one city, but last year, Mombasa and Kisumu were given the status of cities. So those two cities will be county government cities. So they'll be run like city county. They will have governors. The rest of the cities will be fitting into the county governments. And also for you to be able to be a city or a municipality or a town, there are certain criteria that you must meet. One is population. You must have 500,000 population for you to qualify as a city, plus other conditions. And therefore, that range going to municipalities, 250, and also to towns. According to the constitution and according to the devolution, cities are answerable to the county governments. So the management of the cities and urban areas and municipalities will be subject to governor and county government. The appointment of the people who will be managing those cities will be sanctioned by the county government.
One of the most significant changes under the Constitution of Kenya is that all sovereign power is given to the people of Kenya. One way in which we, the people of Kenya, will exercise our sovereign power is through the election of representatives at national and county levels. During the forthcoming elections, each voter will cast 6 ballots, one each for the president, the member of parliament, the women's representative to parliament, the governor, the senator, the county assembly representative. So just how important is our choice of leader to these positions?
The governor is the chief executive, is the CEO that overlooks all these dynamics that we are talking about, including the county executive committee. We expect the local people to elect governors who know what they're doing, who understand what the powers are, their limitations and powers, and who are able to carry the people with them in terms of protecting what we are having in terms of counties and ensuring that development, at the end of the day, is development and service delivery. The county assembly is the big organ there. It makes laws. It receives and approves budgets, for example, because as I've told you, there will be need for people to participate. One area will feel they need a bridge, another area needs health center, another area needs something else or education. These things are pulled together into a document. And that document, whether it's a budget or an integrated plan, then has to get to a table where representatives, the county representatives, will be sitting, which is the county assembly. So as they sit at the assembly level, they are now able to deliberate. So if you end up electing an inefficient county assembly representative, you are done. When we talk about senator, we must think of parliament as having 2 houses. So there, when you talk of the senator, you know that the senators are really the mouthpieces. They protect the interest of the county. So when they are there at the national level, in parliament, at the Senate level, they will be debating those bills and discussing those issues that relate to the counties and ensuring that the other arm, which is the national, does not kind of manipulate or undermine the county governments.
Despite having its several benefits, devolution also has risks. One risk is the election of bad leaders into these key leadership positions.
Kenyans fairly know the kind of leaders they want, but somehow they always end up electing the wrong ones. And I fear that will still continue.
There are those who would argue that we get the leaders that we deserve. So we have tended to elect people who are rich. We have an admiration for wealth that causes us to elect those who are rich, often without asking how they became rich. So often we elect criminals, gangsters, thieves, and so you'll find Parliament is full of extremely corrupt individuals, drug dealers, in a high proportion.
Elections has been reduced to like a battlefield. And if you see all our elections, especially between 1992 to date, the candidates who are vying for any seat, they usually have this thing they call a jeshi. Some hired young men called goons to do their bidding. So unfortunately, it's rare to find leaders in Kenya. What we have are politicians. Politicians achieve for themselves. Leaders achieve for their society. Politicians are known by how they treat their opponents through crude weapons and everything else. Leaders seek to influence the electorate and even influence other people to follow them.
We should not allow money to influence our decision. And once you don't allow money to influence your decision, then you start to ask yourself, who among these contenders should I elect? You will go to the second situation where you actually look at the history of that person. If it's not about money, then it means I can elect you irrespective of whether you give me money or not.
I think when you look at the entire electoral cycle in Kenya, which usually is between election years, what you find is that the first one is that we have a very low base in terms of how to vet who becomes the country's leaders.
Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya on leadership and integrity provides the standards for good leaders.
Chapter 6 sets out the principles of leadership and integrity. So that when you're talking about the principles of leadership, for example, it will provide that leadership is about serving the people, it's not about power over the people.
Chapter 6 is very radical, which is why it will be fought to death. It is precisely for that reason that as Kenyans, we have a collective responsibility to ensure Chapter 6 is followed.
It's a short chapter in the Constitution, but with very succinct provisions relating, it sets out the principles, how state officers carry their offices, including maintaining the dignity of the office.
Chapter 6 seeks to change leadership in this country fundamentally. First, if you look at Chapter 6, and then you look at the chapter on representation, then you find that for the first time, we are allowing what we call independent candidates. It was necessary to allow independent candidates because we realized that political parties themselves can become and have become dens of corruption.
When you look at the entire chapter read together with the chapter on representation of the people, you will find that for the first time, these elections will be unique. That you will not use violence or other means or seek to influence people, bribery, corruption, and all these things, which have been done before.
The idea of vetting people before election is a very fundamental one. Vetting in this constitution is contemplated at various levels and at various stages. Only through vetting are you then able to say, well, you cannot be on the ballot box with this kind of history. And various bodies have been contemplated. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is one. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is another. The Commission on Administrative Justice is another. And even the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions.
You cannot also be qualified to meet requirements of Chapter 6 if your past and your present is full of criminal cases following you. You've had so many people who have been accused. For example, those accused by the International Criminal Court.
We all have very high expectations for the county governments, but there is also the fear that the county governments will devolve corruption to the local level. And we ask, is it the county's turn to eat? What needs to be done to ensure corruption is not transferred to the county level?
In terms of devolution, the risk is there that corruption that we are seeing at national level in public service will devolve also to the counties because of the huge amounts of resources that will go down to the county, one, and two, because the structure and the operational mechanisms of public service in the counties will more or less be modeled on what we have at the national level. We have the same institution similar to Parliament that we have county assembly. We have the same county representatives who are equivalent to members of Parliament. We have the executive similar to this one, the county executive that will be set up there. And their mode of operations, more or less, their systems will be similar to what we have seen at the national level. Some of the institutions that have been existing at national level to fight corruption will take a long time to get to the counties. So I would say that in the short term, the questions of fighting corruption at the counties may not really amount to much.
There is also fear that state officers involved in past corruption scandals and mismanagement have their eyes trained on the counties and, if successful, will transfer their corruption habits to the new dispensation. Unfortunately, the Cabinet and Parliament removed all electoral vetting provisions from the leadership and integrity law, no doubt aware that most of their numbers do not meet the standards of Chapter 6. What does this mean in terms of leadership at county level?
For the first time in the history of this country, we have created commissions and independent offices. Now, these commissions and independent offices are now constitutional bodies. What is their primary role? Their primary role is to defend the sovereignty of the people. Now, that takes us back to Article 1 of the Constitution, which says all sovereign authority and power is vested in the people of Kenya.
We realized that it was not easy to enforce Chapter 6 within the earlier existing institutions. That is where the independent commissions and independent offices come in. The 17 independent officers and independent commissions and other players who are concerned with the elections decided that the best way to do this is to have a joint vetting board. And so the four entities, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, the CAJ, the IEBC, and the EACC, agreed that we would work together in that mechanism. It would not affect Chapter 6 in any way, because each of these organs already have those powers. So with or without the leadership bill, they can all still exercise the powers, and we would go ahead with the joint vetting board.
The ultimate guarantor of our constitution is the people of Kenya. They are the ones who will ultimately guarantee that the people get the leaders they deserve. Say the people get the leaders they deserve, so it's ultimately up to the people.
A leader is meant to help people fulfill their expectations. Lead properly and help people fulfill their expectations. So if we lose this chance, having lost it in 1963, it will be quite depressing to a number of Kenyans.
There are 5 types of voters in Kenya. The first type of voters are people who vote with their stomach. They look for something to eat from the aspirant, whether it's something to eat like a sugar or a drink or even a leso. The second type of voter are the voters who use the tongue to vote. They rely on their ethnic group, mother tongue, to select leaders. You find they cannot elect a Maasai if they are not Maasai. The third type of voter in Kenya, unfortunately again, is one who votes with the heart. They just go with whimsical attitude towards a candidate. They say, this candidate looks good, he dresses well, he speaks well. And speaking well and looking good does not bring development. Then there are those who vote with the wind. Unfortunately, this group, they don't even attend political rallies. They don't know what's going on. At the polling station, you will hear the mask, tunachagua nani. The fifth type of voter are few in this country, and we need to increase that number. It's the people who vote with their head. You use your brains to think through about someone, whether that person can make a difference in your country and in your county, and these are the kinds of voters we want to see.
So which type of voter are you? Will you vote with your stomach or with your tongue at the next election? Or will you vote with your head and choose a leader who meets the standards of Chapter 6 and who will bring development to your county? The choice is yours. Good counties need good leaders. Support Chapter 6.
This program is brought to you by TISA with the support of our funding partners. However, views expressed are those of the individuals featured and do not necessarily represent views of our partners.